Good afternoon. I know I probably have drawn the short straw by having the after lunch slot, so hopefully you'll be able to bear with me, and I'll entice you to stay with me by a short video at the end about New Zealand. So I want to start by thanking you for inviting me to participate in this conference and for allowing me to share something about what we've done in New Zealand to attract migrants. I'm going to start with a little bit of background about New Zealand, and then I'll talk about how the government has approached the business growth agenda and positioned immigration and migration within this. I will then talk to two of our key policies which support the government's growth agenda, which are investment and skilled migration. New Zealand is a very small country which sits on the other side of the world from Estonia. And actually, as a show of hands, how many of you have actually been to New Zealand as a tourist? Or indeed studied? Nobody? I know one person in the front. Couple. As of September 2015, actually I have to concentrate and move the slides along. Now this slide is a little bit out of date, but it just gives you a little bit of a snapshot about some of the key statistics that make New Zealand. As of September 2015, we had a population of around 4.6 million. We're rich in natural resources, and we have a reputation for our Kiwi ingenuity, that is, finding new and innovative ways of doing things. The government wants to lift the overall skill level of the New Zealand workforce, ensure that firms have access to the skills they need to improve long-run labour productivity growth, increase wages, maintain high levels of labour market participation, and reduce welfare dependency. The government also has an overarching objective to accelerate growth across all sectors and regions of New Zealand. The government is driving a business growth agenda, which is building a more competitive and productive economy for New Zealand, and driving this by ensuring that the government stays focused on what matters to business to encourage and confidence and further investment in New Zealand. So Immigration New Zealand, as was mentioned, is part of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. This is an explicit recognition that immigration is an important economic lever. The ministry deals not only with immigration, but also the labour market, health and safety in the workplace, and science and innovation, among other things. Immigration is critical to New Zealand's prosperity and the business growth agenda. It strengthens international linkages, increases sector and regional collaborations, attracts foreign investment and entrepreneurs, and brings skilled workers to New Zealand. Immigration New Zealand particularly facilitates skilled migrants who provide skills, labour, and capital to New Zealand businesses to make them prosper. Skilled migrants with international experiences help businesses to become more productive, innovative, and successful. Businesses with networks, access to capital and international connections can then in turn offer significant benefits to the economy. They tend to grow faster, innovate more, and bring more capital and money into New Zealand. Again, as a bit of background, not only does immigration help facilitate the entry of skilled migrants, entrepreneurs, and investors, we also support the growth of two key export earning sectors which contribute to the increase in the economic value. Tourism, which is worth 8.7 billion New Zealand dollars, and international education, which is worth 2.85 billion New Zealand dollars. At Immigration New Zealand, we're also cognizant that raising the profile of New Zealand through education and tourism, of course, among other things, is a critical component of our marketing strategy. In the tourism space, immigration continues to experience significant growth in volumes. Visitors, particularly from China, continue unabated, up 44% on last year. Recently, New Zealand received a record-breaking 3 million visitors in a year. These numbers are expected to reach 3.75 million visitors by 2021. Tourism New Zealand is working with us and is committed to investing early within emerging markets like India, Indonesia, and Brazil. The government will also maintain and seek new agreements that support aviation routes that are critical to developing these tourism markets. New Zealand has recently concluded an air services agreement with India that provides for the airlines of each country to work with each other as on code shares. So this enables one of our key government investments, Air New Zealand, to work with its Star Alliance partners, Singapore Airlines and Air India, to boost travel between India and New Zealand. In the education space, New Zealand's international education industry experienced growth of 13% in 2014, with enrolments now at the highest level since 2004. The international education industry is worth 2.5 billion New Zealand dollars per year to New Zealand, with over 73,000 international students entering the country in 2013-14. The sector has the goal of doubling in value by 2025, and the role that immigration plays in making the visa process as straightforward as possible, for example, supports this goal. International students are also an important source of skilled migrants for us, and immigration works with the education sector and businesses to develop pathways for these students into the labour market. In 2013-14, 1 in 6 international students achieved residence in New Zealand. These links between education and tourism and long-term migration are also an important part of the migrant process, both in terms of individual experiences and the power of the word of mouth. To give a bit more context, New Zealand is a country with a diverse population and workforce, and I note it's actually quite similar to that of Ireland. Approximately 25% of the population and 40% of Aucklanders, Auckland being our biggest city, are born overseas. Migrants make a net fiscal contribution of $3.3 billion New Zealand annually, compared with the New Zealand-born population's contribution of $2.8 billion New Zealand dollars. This is primarily because we target the highly skilled migrants who tend to work in higher-paying jobs. New Zealand's position as part of the Asia-Pacific region is a huge opportunity and also a challenge. Increasing engagement with Asia and the Pacific requires New Zealand to develop new ways of doing business, and immigration plays a key role in this process. The Recognised Seasonal Employer Scheme is recognised as one of the most effective management migration tech schemes in the world. Every year, up to 9,000 workers from across the Pacific enter New Zealand temporarily to work in the horticulture and viticulture sector. Although the sector employs 50,000 people, the RSE workers are highly productive and valued by employers in the international and support the growth of the sector from 5 billion New Zealand dollars to 10 billion New Zealand dollars by 2020. As part of an annual survey of employers, 86% stated that the RSE scheme supports their business growth. The RSE program delivers a win for New Zealand, supports the skills development of Pacific workers, assists with Pacific labour mobility, and generates considerable remittances across the region, not to mention supporting regional government-to-government relations. So now that I've set the scene for what drives the business growth agenda and the key role that Immigration New Zealand plays, I want to turn to the process and provide a bit more details about the two main areas, skilled migration and investment, and how we attract the people and skills that we want. Although the visible part of Immigration New Zealand is the issuing of visas and the enforcement and border functions, which is what you see when you arrive in any country, Immigration New Zealand also plays a key part in facilitating the attraction and retention of labour, skills, knowledge, and capital that supports New Zealand's growth. This doesn't mean that we compromise on some of the risk elements of immigration, but rather that we better manage it if we focus on delivering an easier, higher quality service to those people that we want to come to New Zealand. Some years ago, we realized that there's a much longer visa process. It starts when prospective migrants begin to consider alternatives to their current residence, and also continues after the visa is issued, the migrant travels and settles successfully in New Zealand. As a business-facing organisation, we also realise there's a parallel process for New Zealand employers who are looking to access that skills and knowledge. We've worked hard across government to ensure that we can attract and retain the best people that New Zealand needs in order to prosper. In 2011, Immigration initiated what we call Vision 2015 to develop a more flexible, responsive and efficient approach to delivering our services. The goal of the vision was to be a trusted partner. So that means with immigration agents, with education agents, with employers, delivering outstanding immigration services and bringing the best people that New Zealand needs in order to prosper. This means in practice that we are organizing ourselves around the customer and the employer, simplifying processes and giving more flexible access to products and services with much greater collaboration across key sectors such as education and tourism. So let's start at the beginning of that process. We can't advertise to the whole world. Instead, we're looking for people who've already turned their mind to migration and are considering New Zealand. This connection could have been formed through a family member, a previous experience, for example, such as in education or tourism, or simply a desire to live a different life. In our advertising, we're also trying to be very clear about the skills and experience that New Zealand needs in order to grow and prosper. We have a settlement and attraction program which has an onshore and an offshore presence. Within New Zealand, the focus is on sectors and skills, migrant retention, and marketing. Among other things, this involves using specialist expertise to attract migrants and support New Zealand business by giving employers access to knowledge and networks. It also looks after the end of the process, some of the things that one of my colleagues was talking about in Dublin, about the various agencies that are set up in order to support migrants once they're in a country. Offshore, the focus is primarily on investor attraction. So Immigration New Zealand is actively involved in targeting and attracting high net worth investors, including entrepreneurs, using the government's business immigration policies. The target is smart investors who have the capital, commercial expertise, and international networks that can accelerate New Zealand's growth. Since 2009, over 1,600 investors have applied under the policy, and at present, the pipeline contains 4.02 billion New Zealand dollars of funds, with over 1.6 billion New Zealand dollars invested across a range of areas. The program involves in-depth collaboration across government and capital markets, for example, with the private sector, and is leading the development of new and significant commercial opportunities in key trading markets. So what is it about New Zealand that attracts investors? According to Forbes, it's the third best country for doing business in 2014. We pride ourselves in being second only behind Denmark for lack of corruption. It has a particularly sound banking sector, which seems so far, touch wood, to have escaped some of the things that have hit other parts of the world in the last 5 to 10 years. It also has Australia and China as its two largest trading partners, with FTAs with China, Australia, and other ASEAN nations. And of course, above all, from my perspective, flexible immigration policies which are designed to support investment. According to Credit Suisse, 2014, a little out of date, but still valid, global wealth grew by over 8% between 2013 and 2014. Although the US still tops the table for the most high net worth individuals, the Asia-Pacific region is catching up with a growing number of new millionaires and billionaires. Credit Suisse estimates that there are over 45,000 people worth over $100 million US dollars. Clearly, these people have a choice as to where they reside, and so genuinely understanding what is driving them and what their needs are is critical if we're to attract them to New Zealand and mobilize their skills, capital, and network to benefit New Zealand and grow New Zealand. The single largest challenge that we face, and I'm sure is very common amongst a lot of countries, is moving investors from being largely passive but interested in New Zealand to actively active. And the movement could be dependent on so many factors, including who they are, their nationality, their familiarity with New Zealand and the experiences they might have encountered with New Zealand in the past, the stage that they're at their career when they're considering moving, and their willingness to engage with government and the level of trust that they may have with various governments they've encountered in the past. So once we have their interest, investors can take the leap. There are two key policy streams under the Investor Migrant Attraction Program. One is Investor Plus and one is Investor. The policies have been operational since 2009 and to date have delivered over 1,600 applications, about 137 of which are Investor Plus. It's worth noting that the majority of the investment comes from China, but a considerable amount of the most high value and active investment comes from countries like the US, Japan, and the United Kingdom. From the New Zealand point of view, the policy has been a significant success. This is because the government has built the attraction program around the policy and is focused on a proactive approach to targeting and engaging with investors. The attraction program has been built around collaboration across government, through foreign affairs and New Zealand trade and enterprise, as well as with business, particularly in the capital markets, including banks, and now major business advisory firms are also getting more and more involved. But even more crucially, the policy allows investors to exercise a lot of choice over where they invest, the investment classes that they must put their money into under the policy. There is something there for every level of risk appetite, and this plays a crucial role in the challenge that we face activating investors to really engage with New Zealand. So what about other migrants? What do they get when they choose New Zealand? What pathway do they take? The skilled migrant pathway is one way for skilled people to obtain residence in New Zealand and to use their skills and experience to benefit New Zealand as a whole and to drive the business growth agenda. Sometimes these migrants are not only looking for a great place to work, but they're also looking for a lifestyle change. The New Zealand Now website is a good place for prospective migrants to start. It has a wealth of information ranging from what kind of preparation a migrant might need to do, to the visa process, to what to expect when you're living in New Zealand. Once a prospective migrant has registered their interest in moving to New Zealand, the tool will match the migrant with prospective employers. The website has built an extensive database of people overseas who are keen to come to New Zealand to live and work. There are currently about 270,000 people in the database, and this is growing at between 8,000 to 12,000 per month. The Skill Finder tool allows New Zealand employers to send job opportunities to people in the database with the skills that they're seeking. A survey in August 2013 showed that around 7% of these job emails result in a successful placement. More recently, there's been a website developed as a response to the labour and skills needs following the Canterbury and Christchurch earthquake 5 years ago. This is not just for migrant workers, but has proved useful in fast-tracking the immigration process. The website allows job seekers to register on the website and upload their CV, and employers can do the same. The hub also provides skills brokers who work to match employers with prospective employees. If the hub can't find anyone suitable, they can give the employer a letter to that effect. If the employer wants to, they can then find a migrant, someone from overseas, and use the letter to have the migrant's visa application fast-tracked by Immigration New Zealand. So what are the objectives of the skilled migrant category? All skilled migrant category people are assessed for their ability to settle and contribute in New Zealand, with skilled employment in New Zealand being the main factor. These applicants are not required to demonstrate that there are no New Zealanders available to do the job they're undertaking, as the roles that they would be working in are likely to be included on the essential skills and demand list. That is the list that we have of occupations that are in high demand. The category also focuses on attracting those with specific skills and experience that New Zealand needs. Migrants are also required to demonstrate that they can contribute to New Zealand socially as well as economically, and ultimately to be able to successfully settle in New Zealand. Outcomes are generally positive, with over 90% of the skilled migrants actually in skilled employment and 80% in jobs that match their skill levels. There are also very low levels of welfare uptake. The process is quite simple. So when a prospective migrant actually has a job offer, then they determine they otherwise qualify for skilled migration. They begin the visa process. First, they submit a expression of interest, which is entered into an electronic pool. To enter the pool, the migrant must meet the minimum criteria of 100 points, which they claim points for what they believe they're eligible for. Points are given for a number of factors, including age, qualifications, employment experience, and qualifications and experience in areas of skill shortage. Upon entering the pool, they're selected if they meet the selection criteria, which is set by the minister. And the minister determines on a fortnight-by-fortnight basis whether that is appropriate given the labour market as it currently stands in New Zealand. The expression of interest is then allocated to an immigration officer to assess, and if the client appears eligible for the points claimed and meets the selection criteria, they're then invited to apply for residence. If they lodge an application, an officer there will then assess whether they meet all of the criteria, which will at that point include health and character. The skilled migrant policy has been in place since 2004. Over the years, there have been a number of refinements designed to lift the quality of applicants in order to get more skilled people into higher skilled jobs. These refinements have included redefining skilled employment and making sure that the expression of interest process and the selection of expression of interest is much more closely linked to employability and the identified skill shortages. In addition, the policy has enabled the government to tweak the process a little bit and encourage people to gain skilled employment outside of Auckland. As I mentioned before, generally the skilled migrant process has been seen as a success. Of the 87% of applicants approved within New Zealand, 99% had a job offer. For applicants applying from outside New Zealand, 52% had a job offer. Our current countries that we're interested in and that appear to be submitting the most applications are currently China, India, the Philippines, and Great Britain. So in conclusion, and I know I've gone at once over very, very lightly, but hopefully it will generate a little bit of discussion amongst all of you. New Zealand's immigration challenge is very, very different to Europe's, but we're all engaged in the war for talent. McKinsey estimates that there could be an 18 million person shortage of highly skilled, college-educated workers by 2020. With China, this could actually increase up to 35 million. Immigration New Zealand replaces the skills that we lose when Kiwis go overseas with a Kiwi diaspora of almost 1 million people offshore. Immigration brings skills, ideas, practices, and capital that grow New Zealand's economy and help our culture evolve. Our mission is very clear. We are mandated and we're organized to deliver. So I want to leave you now with not just these picturesque shots of New Zealand, but also with a video which perhaps best sums up the positioning of New Zealand. All government agencies have access to these materials: foreign affairs and trade, education and immigration, and we've all been involved in the development and telling of the New Zealand story. It's designed to show what makes New Zealand unique and enables us to communicate our value to the world, both in terms of doing business and attracting short and long-term migrants. It's based around three themes: kaitiaki, care of people in place; integrity, trust, honesty, humility, and respect; and resourcefulness, a fresh, outward-looking way of thinking. The New Zealand story is flexible and inclusive, and it's guided the development based on a great deal of data of unique immigration positioning with a focus on people and the reality of life, leveraging New Zealand's status as a lifestyle superpower whilst managing migrant expectations, telling the truth about real life and delivering a strong employment message. The more aligned the expectations of migrants are with that of employers and communities, and New Zealand, the more productive the experience and journey will be for all. And hopefully we'll now get the video. No?
Welcome to the country of open spaces. Where nature bursts and flows. Where the elements come alive. Where there is room to breathe. Places to find. Welcome to the country of open hearts. Where care for the land and people is genuine. Where life is for living. Time spent together is never time wasted. Where lasting partnerships are formed. where strangers are treated as friends. And memories are treasured forever. Welcome to the country of open minds. Where learning is embraced and opinions valued. Where freshness is championed and quality prized for the world to enjoy. Where nature inspires incredible thinking. Where ingenuity drives innovation and productivity. Where big ideas are born every day and new technologies are perfected. Where the impossible becomes real. And where every sunrise inspires the extraordinary. Welcome to the country of open spaces, open hearts, and open minds. Together, we can do amazing things.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Shall we have questions? Seal taga on käsi püsti, palun mikrofoni sinna.
Hi, I'm Riin Savi from Estonian Traders Association. Thank you, first of all, for the very nice presentation and for sharing your success story with us. So what I took out of this presentation is two aspects. What is an effective or good immigration policy? First of all, climate. And here, unfortunately, Estonia is not at a very advantageous position. And the second aspect is good policy in terms of coordination, because immigration policy is a function of economic policy, social policy, educational policy, etc. So in terms of the other aspect, what would be your suggestions to Estonia? What have been the main pitfalls or main challenges in coordinating these very different policy fields, more even communicating with the private sector, the entrepreneurs and the investors?
I'm not sure I'm actually entirely qualified to answer that, but I'll give it my best shot. I think New Zealand has had a very determined and deliberate immigration strategy for quite some years now, and I think one of the things I mentioned in my presentation is that when things haven't gone quite right, we've tweaked them very quickly. And I think one of the advantages of being a small country is that you can do that. So for example, with the definition of skilled employment, we actually did change the definition to make sure that we were getting the people that we wanted, rather than qualified doctors working in taxis, that kind of thing, to make sure that that was happening. In terms of the actual policy tweaks, I'm not sure I'm really that qualified to answer your question, but I think along the way you do have pitfalls, and we've been very, very lucky. Again, because New Zealand is quite a small country, and you can see from the video, we have worked together all the way across government to ensure that the messages that we're giving to anybody that we're speaking to is the same. We do have a very coordinated approach. And again, some of that is by virtue of being a small country. I mean, I know all of the people in London who are working for New Zealand. I know what they're doing, and I know the kinds of people that they're talking to and trying to attract. So when I'm talking to those people or talking to their colleagues, I can be on the same message. So I think that's one of the things that's actually been quite a success.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one more question.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for the presentation. We had a nice chat earlier as well. My main question is, today in Estonia, I think we're facing a big problem with public opinion. Did you have fears, or did the public in general have fears of, I don't know, losing their own jobs, security, etc., cultural differences, and how did you overcome these? Because I think this is the biggest challenge we're facing here right now.
I think New Zealand is in a slightly different situation because we are pretty much ourselves a country of migrants. It's about 7% of the population is the indigenous Maori population. Everybody else is actually a migrant. So I think we do come from quite a different perspective. There are issues from time to time. One of the biggest ones that we've actually faced in more recent times is migrant exploitation. And the government, one of the government's key policies is making sure that migrants are afforded the same opportunities and the same salaries and conditions and so on as New Zealand citizens, because we don't want to drive down the labour market. And I think that has been something which has probably taken some people some time to come to terms with. There have been a few very well publicised cases of migrant exploitation, but it's something that the government, again, has worked across to make sure that we can actually combat that. So making sure that immigration, for example, doesn't immediately deport migrants who've been exploited, making sure that we work very closely with the businesses and particularly the business representatives to ensure that the messages about what's required of migrants and of employers is actually getting out there into the community. So I mean, I won't say for a second that it's perfect, but I think one thing we have done really, really well is to ensure that we're continually evolving and working very, very closely across government.
So thank you. Thank you very much. There's something you will need to carry.
Thank you so much.
Do you have luggage?
I do. Thank you so
thank you.
much.